This is how to never tilt and prepare yourself for a story of woe about me tilting horribly. You might enjoy it, actually, if you're hate watching these videos. If you're not, by the way, and you just want to get better at poker, there's an easy way to do it. Click the link underneath the video. You'll come over to our site and you can get our very best free training resources to help you take your game up a level. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, tilt. So I used to think that I didn't have a problem with tilt. Now, it turns out I was pretty dumb because tilt comes in lots of forms. This is what I want you to know. I'm going to tell you a story about a little meltdown I had, but if you've never had a meltdown, like a full-blown, red mist, playing horribly and losing lots of chips, that doesn't mean you don't tilt. The right definition of tilt is any emotional state that causes you to play badly, right? Any emotional state that causes you to play badly. So usually anger, or frustration, or boredom even, but can also be positive emotions that make you kind of force it too much because you think you can win every pot. Lots of forms of tilt, none of them that helpful. My experience with tilt was that I thought I'd kind of got a grip on my emotions when I played poker. And then I played, quite a few years ago now, I played a session of Pot Limit Omaha and cash, always a little bit volatile. And I started off playing pretty well. But I lost. I lost maybe 6 or 7 buy-ins, which is, a decent sized loss, certainly not one that you enjoy. But for whatever reason that night, I think because I knew the games were good and I should have been winning, so I got kind of that entitlement tilt, as Tommy Angelo calls it. I felt like I should be winning. I started to then play badly, and I played worse and worse and worse. And, after about the third hour, of play, I'd completely lost any ability to think rationally. I was looking for any excuse to jam it in and get more and more angry that things weren't going my way. When the smoke cleared and I finally stood up from my computer, I was down, I think, 19 buy-ins, 19 buy-ins, and also down a mouse because I smashed it down so hard. When I woke up the next day, I actually felt shame. Now, no one else knew, I hadn't told anyone else, but I felt that horrible, you might be able to relate, that horrible feeling that you've just done something very stupid the night before. But also that it was my fault. I knew it was my fault. I should have stopped way before I actually did stop. So that made me go back and do some work on exactly why I tilted. And I want this to never happen to you. So I'm going to give you some keys. There are 5 keys to not tilting. But this is, like I said, not just stopping meltdowns. This is keeping yourself in a good emotional frame and way of thinking for playing poker, whether you're a little bit off or having losses or having a downswing, no matter what. So how do we do that? Because poker is an emotional challenge. You're not in complete control of your results. And that's the first clue. You need to focus on process. Focus on process. So what does that mean? Well, we naturally focus on results, right? That's how we're taught in life from when we're very little. If you win, you've done well. If you get an A, you've done well. If you don't, you've done badly. And how far behind you are is how far badly you've done or whatever. Poker's not quite like that, though. Sometimes we win and we've got lucky. Sometimes I know not you, obviously, when you win, you're always awesome. Sometimes you win and you've got lucky. Sometimes you lose and you've done nothing wrong. So if we tie our emotions to our results, it should be pretty obvious when we take a step back that you're making a mistake if you do that. Because your emotions shouldn't be tied to something you can't control. What you can control is the process. What you can control is your decisions. They're the process in poker. So there's no easy way to do this because obviously you're trying to buck a lot of programming and what you naturally do. However, my tip is to start working on your game away from the poker table. You don't have to do hours and hours at first. You can build up, just do 10 minutes every day and look at some hands you've played and get a mixture of hands you've won and hands you've lost. Always do a mixture, but do the same thing for each hand, which is go through the hand, analyze your play, think about your play, think about your opponent's play, ask yourself if you could have done any different, and then challenge your decisions. So if you won and you had the best hand, ask yourself, what's the worst hand I could have value bet with here against this player's range? So challenge your decisions. What you're doing there is you're training your brain to look at wins and losses the same. They're just things to analyze and get better at. And that's where money comes from. If you can just get your process better, your results will naturally follow, but you'll never control which you can win or lose. So this is key in controlling your emotions when you play. The more you're tied to results as a kind of judgment on what you've done, the more likely you are to tilt and feel emotional about what you do at the poker table. The second thing is to look for cues. Find your cues. So a cue is just something you play pool with, isn't it? But it's also something that triggers a behavior. So, for example, your alarm clock triggers your morning routine every morning, for example, if you're going to work or whatever. Your cues for being emotionally tilted in poker and starting to not play well will often be the same, right? They'll often be the same because you're a human being and us human beings are very predictable. So my cues for tilt are, first of all, I need to be in a downswing, so I need to be in a negative frame of mind. Second of all, I need to be in a game that I think I should be winning in. So a game where I feel entitled to win. And then thirdly, I need to get bad beated by worse players. And if those things come together, that's kind of my biggest cue for tilting and getting emotionally off center. Now that I know that, I know what to look for. So for a start, if I'm in a downswing, I know when I sit down, I need to be especially aware of where my head's at, where my emotions are at. And then if the other things get met, I know that I really need to make sure I'm being analytical and objective, taking steps away from the table, taking breaks, refocusing, all that good stuff. So I'm not getting too in the moment of all this bad stuff that can cause me to play emotionally. So find your personal cues. Take some self-awareness. Takes a little bit of honesty with yourself. Not easy to admit the vulnerabilities that we have, but it'll really help you as a poker player if you can do that, and will help you stay much more objective when you play. Have a stop loss is number 3. Now, there are good mathematical reasons for never having a stop loss. A stop loss is where you reach a certain amount of losing and you quit for the night or for the week or whatever it is. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense because if you're a winning poker player, right, in the games you're playing in, then you should just play poker because eventually you'll win money and you'll win tournaments or whatever. It's just that at the moment, you're getting the worst of it, you're getting unlucky. However, we're not mathematicians, we're human beings. And we all have a tolerance at which point it'll just affect us emotionally. And once we get affected emotionally, we can't play well. So I recommend that you do have a stop loss. Now this is most applicable to cash poker, where you can say, all right, I know that after about 5 or 6 buy-ins, I'm pretty pissed off, I'm not enjoying it, I'm feeling negative and it's hard for me to play well. So I'm going to say 5 buy-ins and that's it for the day. I know poker will be there tomorrow. A little bit harder if you play tournaments, but here's what I do if you do play tournaments. When you're going to buy in, assess your mental state, assess your level of tiredness, assess, whether you've been winning or losing recently, how good you feel about your game, and buy into tournaments that you think you can play well for the whole tournament. Because what you don't want to happen is to play for like 5-6 hours, to play okay, then take a couple of bad beats and go on tilt because you're tired or feeling negative about your game. So assess it at the start with tournaments, but have some limits. Next up is use breaks. Use breaks. So what happens when we go on tilt is we get lots of emotion in our system, lots of adrenaline, lots of kind of unhelpful responses. And if you take a break, that's your best chance to clear it. Otherwise, you're just, that feeling of you're in that kind of fog. So use breaks. In tournaments, you get built-in breaks. So get up, walk away from your monitor or away from the table, do something else. Make a cup of tea, talk to someone, look out the window, read a page of a book, take lots of deep breaths, allow your brain and your emotions to clear. And then when you go back to the table, reassess the situation you're in. Just say to yourself, I've got this amount of big blinds, here's what the other players have got, here's what I think of these players, here's where my opportunities are, and get your brain in the present and emotion free. And I would say do exactly the same if you're a cash player. The breaks aren't built in, so maybe you have to set an alarm, but take those breaks and use them. Otherwise you'll just get, in the forest of negative emotion. I think that was in a Tolkien book, probably, The Forest of Negative Emotion. And then finally, be aware of downswings. You're always more likely to tilt and play emotionally if you are currently losing in poker, if you're in a downswing, because you're bringing negativity into the game. And maybe there are some poker players that have the ability not to do that, but for most of us, you're not going to play as well when you're losing. So you should be on a shorter kind of time frame to when you stop, in my opinion, to stop tilt, to stop that negative emotion coming in. So be very aware of downswings. If you don't think you can play well, here's the test in a downswing. You don't have to take a break in a downswing. Everyone says take a break. You don't have to. The question is, can you still play well? And the second question is, if things go against you in the tournament or in the cash game session, will you still be able to play well? You've got to be honest with yourself before you start, or will you go into yourself and start feeling negative? If the answer's B, then don't play seriously. You can still play poker, play for really fun stakes, free money, go to the local card room, play a little tournament, play a pub tournament, whatever it is, but don't play seriously if the downswing is going to affect you. All right, remember, poker is just a game. It should not be a source of negative emotion. So try these steps and make sure you're not tilting often, even if it's just small tilting, which can make the difference between winning and losing. It doesn't have to be a complete blow up. I really hope this gives you value and helps you play more objectively. If it has, click a like. Also, I'd love you to subscribe. Let's make this official. We've come this far. Subscribe and turn your notifications on. It helps the channel and helps you know when we've dropped another piece of poker gold. Do leave a comment or a question down below. And like I said, click that link if you'd like some free training from us. All right, take it easy. I'll talk to you again very soon.